The shovel hit the red earth with a heavy thud as Obomnik threw another pile of sand into the shallow pit. The moon was high above Umwogo village, shining faintly on the faces of the men who stood around him. Tied inside a wooden box at their feet was Adanna, a 19-year-old girl whose voice once filled the village with laughter but now echoed with muffled cries for help. Her hands were bound, her face wet with tears and dust, and every breath she took came out like a prayer. Just a few hours earlier, she had been walking home from the village market, her basket full of cassava and tomatoes for her mother's evening meal, when Obomnik blocked her path. He was the son of the most feared man in the community, Chief Okorik, a rich and heartless man who believed that anything he wanted should be his. And what he wanted was Adanna. Adanna, Obomnik had said, his deep voice echoing against the bamboo trees, "You will marry me next week. My father has already spoken to yours." But Adanna looked him in the eyes and said softly, "Obomnik, I can't marry you. You are wicked. You beat people. You force women. I will never say yes to you, even if you are the last man in Umwogo." Her courage was like fire, but Obomnik's pride was smoke, choking and dangerous. He slapped her so hard that her basket fell, and tomatoes rolled across the dusty ground. He dragged her into his father's compound, shouting that if she would not marry him alive, then she would marry him in death. Now, deep in the old burial ground behind the abandoned shrine, the men dug faster. Adanna screamed and kicked inside the box. Her voice cracked as she cried, "Please. I beg you. Don't do this. I have done nothing wrong." But they didn't stop. They threw the last heap of sand over her, burying her cries beneath the earth. The crickets stopped singing. The night grew silent, as if even nature refused to watch. Inside the box, Adanna's tears mixed with the dust. Her heart pounded like a drum. She thought about her mother, Mama Ozioma, who would be waiting for her to return home. She thought about her little brother, Chibik, who always said she was his hero. And as the air grew thin, she whispered her final prayer, "Chinik, don't let me die here. Please, not like this." But just before her voice faded, she heard something strange. A whisper. A deep, gentle voice that seemed to come from the earth itself. "Adanna," it said, "your suffering has been seen. Your tears have spoken. You shall rise again. But when you rise, the living will tremble." Her heartbeat slowed. Her body went still. And in that moment, everything went black. By dawn, the men had covered her grave and disappeared. Nobody knew where Adanna had gone. Some said she had eloped. Others said she was taken by evil spirits. But her mother refused to believe any of it. For 3 nights, she lit a candle by the doorway and cried into the darkness, calling her daughter's name. And somewhere deep under the red soil of Umwogo, Adanna's heart began to beat again. For 3 long nights, the red earth of Umwogo lay still. No one heard a sound from the old burial ground, no one dared go near the abandoned shrine where they had buried Adanna alive. The wind blew softly through the palm trees, carrying whispers that only spirits could understand. But on the 3rd night, something strange happened. The moon disappeared behind thick clouds. The air became cold, too cold for the harmattan season. Then the ground began to tremble, softly at first, then harder. A glowing mist rose from the spot where Adanna had been buried. Beneath the soil, her fingers twitched. Her eyes opened. She gasped, but no air came. Her body was weak, her lungs empty. Yet somehow, she was breathing, not like the living, but like the wind. Her ears could hear things far away, the beating of her mother's heart, the crying of her little brother in their hut, and even the drunken laughter of Obomnik at a nearby palm wine bar. The same Obomnik who had buried her. Her chest burned with anger. Her fingernails, broken and bloody, began to grow again, sharp, black, and strong like iron claws. The voice from before echoed in her mind, "You shall rise again, Adanna. But the living will tremble when they see you." She pushed upward, her hands clawing through the red earth. Worms and roots tangled in her hair, but she kept digging. One hand broke through the surface, then another. The wind howled across the graveyard as she pulled herself out of the soil. Her torn yellow dress was soaked in mud. Her eyes glowed faintly gold in the darkness. She looked around and whispered in a voice that wasn't fully human anymore, "Obomnik, you buried me. Now it's my turn to visit you." Back in the village, Obomnik and his friends were drinking under the mango tree behind Momangechi's palm wine bar. They laughed loudly, telling stories about how they had taught that proud girl a lesson. But a sudden cold wind blew through the bar, making the lanterns flicker. "Who opened the window?" one of the men shouted. "No one did," another said, shivering. Then they heard a faint scratching sound. Like nails dragging on wood. Coming from the direction of the old shrine. Obomnik frowned. "It's nothing. Just wind." But his voice shook. Suddenly, all the dogs in the village began barking at once. The sound echoed through the trees. The fire in the lantern went out by itself, leaving only darkness. One of the men stood up. "Let's go inside," he said. But Obomnik laughed nervously. "You are all acting like cowards. Do you think the dead can walk?" He poured another cup of palm wine and gulped it down. "Adanna is gone forever." At that exact moment, the ground beneath their feet trembled. A shadow passed behind the mango tree. Something, or someone, was watching them. The sound grew louder, footsteps, slow and heavy, moving toward them through the mist. The men froze. Obomnik dropped his cup. Then came a voice, cold and hollow, echoing through the night, "Obomnik, remember my voice." Everyone jumped to their feet. One man screamed, "It's her. It's Adanna," and ran off into the darkness. Obomnik turned pale, staring at the shadows moving near the shrine. His heart pounded like a drum. If your heart is beating fast right now, take a deep breath and click subscribe, because what happens next will leave you speechless. Now, let's continue. The shadow stepped forward, and the moonlight revealed her face. It was Adanna. Covered in soil and blood, eyes glowing like fireflies. Her hair fell in tangled strands across her face, and her lips moved slowly as she whispered. "I told you. I would rather die than marry you." Obomnik fell backward, trembling. He reached for his machete but his hands were shaking so badly that it slipped. "Why you are dead," he stammered. Adanna tilted her head. "Dead," she said softly. "No. I was chosen." She took one step forward, and the lanterns around them burst into sparks. The men screamed and ran, but Adanna didn't chase them. She only looked at Obomnik and said, "Your sins will bury you next." Then she vanished into the mist. As the roosters crowed at dawn, the people of Umwogu woke to find strange footprints leading from the old shrine to the village square. The footprints glowed faintly, like ash after a fire. The elders gathered and whispered, "Could it be a spirit from the underworld?" But Mama Ozioma only stared at the horizon, tears filling her eyes. She could feel it, her daughter was not gone. Something was coming. Something powerful. Something that would shake the whole village. That night, Umwogu village did not sleep. The dogs barked until their voices went dry. The moon hid behind thick clouds. The air smelled like rain and smoke, even though no fire burned anywhere. Inside her hut, Mama Ozioma sat by the doorway, clutching her rosary and whispering Adanna's name. Her son, Chibik, lay asleep beside her, his small hand still holding a photo of his sister. But outside their window, a shadow passed quietly, one that had no footsteps. It was Adanna. She moved through the village like wind, silent and slow. Her skin glowed faintly in the darkness, and her torn yellow dress dragged across the red soil. She was not like before, her heart no longer beat the way it used to. It was steady and cold, like a drum carved from stone. She stopped in front of Obomnik's father's compound. The great iron gate stood tall, guarded by two men holding lanterns. They were laughing about the strange noises they had heard earlier. But when the wind changed, both lanterns went out at once. "Who is there?" one of them shouted. No answer. He raised the lantern to light it again, but when the flame came to life, he froze. Adanna was standing right in front of him. Her eyes glowed like burning coal. The guard dropped the lantern, and it shattered on the ground. Before he could run, Adanna whispered something that sounded like a song. The man's body stiffened. His eyes turned black. He opened his mouth to scream, but no sound came out. He fell face first into the red soil and lay still. The second guard ran inside, shouting, "Ghost! Ghost!" But Adanna had already disappeared into the compound. Inside, Obomnik lay asleep in his room, snoring loudly, surrounded by his father's wealth, gold necklaces, animal skins, and a gun hanging by the window. But even in his dreams, he saw her face. The sound of her voice calling his name woke him up. He sat up suddenly, sweating. "Who's there?" Silence. Then he heard a faint tapping at his window. Tap, tap, tap. He turned slowly, and saw her. Adanna. Her face was half covered in mud, her lips pale, and her hair dripping with soil. She was outside the window, staring straight at him. Obomnik screamed and grabbed his gun. "Stay away from me." But before he could shoot, the lights went off. The wind burst through the window, scattering papers and dust. When the light came back, she was gone. Only her voice remained echoing from nowhere. "You buried me, Obomnik. Now the earth will bury you." The mirror beside his bed cracked. His gun fell from his trembling hands. He ran to his father's room, banging on the door. "Papa! Papa, she's back." Chief Okorik woke up, angry. "Who is back?" "Adanna," Obomnik cried. "The girl I mean, the girl, she's alive." The old man slapped him hard. "Are you mad? How can a dead person return? You are drunk." Obomnik tried to speak, but before he could say another word, they both heard it. The sound of footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Coming closer. The oil lamp on the table flickered and went out. The room filled with a cold wind. The curtain lifted though the windows were closed. Then came a whisper, "Obomnik." Chief Okorik's eyes widened. "Who is that?" he shouted. But the voice didn't stop. "Obomnik. I'm waiting." The door creaked open by itself. Outside the doorway, they saw a muddy footprint glowing faintly red. Chief Okorik fell to his knees. "Spirit of our ancestors, protect us," he cried, but it was too late. A shadow moved past the window. And from that moment, everything in the house changed. Mirrors cracked, chickens cried, and the ground shook beneath their feet. The next morning, villagers gathered around Chief Okorik's compound. They found the two guards lying lifeless by the gate. No wound, no blood, just faces twisted in terror. Chief Okorik stood outside, looking pale and weak. He said nothing. But Obomnik was nowhere to be found. Some said he ran into the forest before dawn. Others whispered that the spirit of Adanna had dragged him underground to her grave. Mama Ozioma heard the news. She held her head and shouted, "Chinik! What is happening in this village? What has my daughter become?" But deep in the forest, where no one could see, Adanna stood under a large iroko tree. Her fingers were still blackened by the curse of the red soil. The same voice that had saved her now spoke again, "Adanna, your vengeance is not complete. The blood of the wicked still cries out." Adanna raised her eyes toward the sunrise. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with fire. "Then I will not rest," she whispered. "Until Omwogu remembers my pain." The sun rose slowly over Omwogu village, but its light felt weak, as if even the sky feared what was happening. The birds did not sing that morning. The children did not play outside. People whispered behind closed doors, saying the same thing over and over. The dead girl has returned. In the market square, Mama Nkechi swore she saw Adanna's reflection in the river that ran beside her store. The reflection was not like any normal one, it was smiling while she was crying. That same night, all the goats in the village broke loose and ran into the forest. The fear spread faster than harmattan fire. Mama Ozioma sat outside her hut, clutching Adanna's old scarf. She could feel her daughter's presence. Somewhere out there, her child was alive, but not the same. Mama Ozioma lifted her eyes to the sky and whispered, "Chinik, if my daughter is lost to darkness, give me the strength to bring her back." The fires from the shrine still burned in people's dreams. For many nights no one in Umwogu village slept without fear. Mothers hung palm fronds on their doors. Children whispered Adanna's name as if it were a curse. Only Mama Ozioma refused to hide. She believed her daughter's spirit was not evil, just lost. So when she heard that a blind prophet lived on Okpu Hill, a man who could speak with spirits and command the wind, she decided to find him. At dawn she tied her wrapper tightly, picked a walking stick, and began the long climb up the rocky hill. Chibik begged to follow, but she said softly, "No, my son. If anything happens to me, someone must live to tell your sister's story." The path was rough. Thorns tore her feet. She prayed with every step. The wind on the hill smelled of rain and old secrets. When she reached the top, she saw a small hut made of mud and palm leaves. Smoke rose from a tiny fire outside. An old man sat on a mat, his eyes white like moonstones. He faced the sunrise though he could not see it. He spoke before she could open her mouth. "Mama Ozioma," he said in a calm voice, "you came to beg for the dead." She gasped. "How do you know my name?" He smiled faintly. "The earth told me. The same earth that swallowed your daughter and gave her back." Mama Ozioma knelt quickly. "Please, wise one, tell me, how can I bring her home? How can I free her from this curse?" The prophet stretched out his hand toward the fire. "What your daughter carries is not a curse. It is the rage of Allah, the earth goddess. The day she was buried alive, her blood mixed with sacred soil. Now she is part spirit, part human. Only one thing can calm her, the blood of truth." Mama Ozioma frowned. "I don't understand." The prophet's voice grew heavier. "A sin was hidden when she died. Until it is spoken aloud and paid for, she will destroy everything she once loved. The truth must come from the mouth of the guilty, or from your own sacrifice." She trembled. "My sacrifice?" He nodded. "If the guilty remain silent, the mother must offer her life so the daughter can live again." Tears filled her eyes. "But I am all my son has left." The prophet turned his blind eyes toward the valley below. "Then prepare him. Because the night is coming when the dead will walk through Umwogu again. And when she calls your name, you must answer, one way or another." A strong gust of wind blew through the hut, scattering ashes into the air. The prophet lifted his head. "Go now, Mama Ozioma. Before darkness finds you on this hill." As she hurried down the slope, thunder roared far away. The trees whispered like people gossiping in fear. By the time she reached the edge of the forest, the sky had turned gray. She looked toward the village and froze. A dark mist hovered over the rooftops. Lightning flashed inside it like beating hearts. The wind carried a voice, soft, broken, but familiar. "Mama, can you hear me?" It was Adanna. Her mother dropped to her knees. "Chinik. She's calling me." The ground shook. From the middle of the mist, a tall figure appeared, Adanna herself, walking slowly toward the hill. Her eyes were brighter than before, her hair flowing as if underwater. Each step she took left blackened marks on the soil. "Mama," she called again, "they lied to me. The ones you call elders. They buried me to hide their own shame." Mama Ozioma's heart pounded. "My daughter, what shame?" Tell me. But before Adanna could answer, lightning struck between them. The hill split slightly, and the voice of the prophet echoed from above, "Do not listen yet. The truth is not ready to be spoken. If you know it now, it will kill you both." The thunder swallowed his words. When the smoke cleared, Adanna was gone, and only the burnt footprints remained on the path. Mama Ozioma picked up a piece of her daughter's torn cloth lying on the ground. She pressed it to her chest and whispered, "If the blood of truth is the price, I will find it. I will find whoever buried my child's soul in lies." As she turned to leave, the wind carried one last whisper from the unseen prophet, "Hurry, woman of the earth, before the spirit within her forgets your face." By the next morning, Unwogu village was filled with the smell of rain and smoke. Everyone spoke in frightened whispers. They said the ghost of Adanna had walked again during the night, that the air itself had carried her cries. Mama Ozioma returned from Okpu Hill weak and dusty, her wrapper torn from thorns. Her eyes looked different, no longer only sad, but fierce. She went straight to the old shrine that had burned down days earlier. Only ashes and the black trunk of the sacred tree remained. She knelt and began to dig through the ashes with her bare hands. Her palms turned grey, but she did not stop. At last, she found something half buried beneath the soot, a small brass bracelet engraved with the mark of Chief Okorik's family. Her breath caught. So, it was not only Obomnik, she whispered. His father too. As she turned the bracelet in her hand, a soft humming sound filled the air. The ashes around her feet began to swirl. A shadow formed, thin, like smoke taking shape. It was Adanna's spirit, faint but real. "Mama," the voice trembled. "You are close to the truth." Mama Ozioma looked up, tears in her eyes. "My daughter, tell me. What truth did they hide from us?" But before Adanna could speak, the shadow twisted and vanished. The next evening, as the full moon began to climb, Mama Ozioma and Chibik reached the river's edge. They were exhausted, their feet bleeding from thorns, but they didn't stop. The water shone like glass under the moonlight. Mist curled above the surface, and a low hum filled the air, the same hum that had followed Adanna since she rose from the grave. Chibik whispered, "Mama, are you sure she will come?" Before she could answer, the river parted in a line of light. From the middle of it, Adanna appeared, glowing softly, her torn yellow dress floating like mist. She carried the clay pot in both hands. "Mama," she said, her voice trembling, half human, half wind. "I waited for you." Mama Ozioma stepped forward slowly. "My child, don't open it. Whatever truth lies in that pot, it will hurt you. It will hurt us all." Adanna looked down at the pot. "Mama, I must. The spirits say the land cannot heal while it sleeps on lies. I saw them bury me. I saw them write my death like a letter. But what I don't understand is, why did the earth itself give me back?" Her mother's lips trembled. "Maybe because the earth knew you were innocent." Adanna nodded. "Then innocence must speak." She raised the pot high. The river swirled violently, lightning flashing across the water. The pot shook in her hands, glowing brighter with each heartbeat. "Mama," she said softly, "if I open it, promise me you will forgive what you see." Mama Ozioma began to cry. "My child, I will forgive anything. Even the truth." The pot cracked. A single line split down its side. From inside came a burst of golden light that shot into the sky, turning the moon blood red. The river roared. The trees bent. The earth trembled beneath their feet. From the shining pot came voices, hundreds of them, rising together in a sorrowful song. Faces appeared in the mist, spirits of women, young and old, each wearing the same sorrowful look Adanna had worn before her death. They spoke as one, "We were buried in silence. Let the world remember our names." Mama Ozioma fell to her knees, crying, "Oh Lord, what have they done to our daughters?" Adanna stood in the center of the light, her body shimmering like flame. The spirit surrounded her, lifting her higher, and their song grew stronger until it filled every corner of Umwogo. In the village, doors burst open. People ran outside, pointing to the red moon and the glowing river. They fell to the ground in fear, crying out for mercy. And then the wind carried one final whisper across the land: when truth rises, no grave can hold it. The clay pot shattered completely, and Adanna vanished into the light. The water settled. The night grew quiet again. Mama Ozioma crawled toward the edge of the river, calling her name. No answer came, only the gentle voice of the river murmuring, "The truth has been spoken, but the story is not done." She pressed her forehead to the wet sand, sobbing softly. Behind her, Chibik whispered, "Mama, look." The broken pieces of the clay pot glowed faintly, forming a line of light that pointed toward the chief's compound. Mama Ozioma wiped her tears and stood up. "Then that is where we go next." She picked up one glowing shard and tied it in her wrapper. The river shimmered once more behind her as she and her son began walking toward the heart of Umwogo, where the final secret waited. Dawn came slowly over Umwogo village. The red glow of the broken moon faded into pale sunlight, but the air still trembled with the memory of the night before. The people whispered that the river had sung, that spirits had risen, and that Adanna's name had echoed through every heart. But far away, Mama Ozioma and Chibik were already walking toward the chief's compound, following the glowing trail of pottery shards that shone like stars on the ground. The compound gates creaked open before they touched them. The courtyard was silent. No guards, no servants. Only the sound of the wind moving through the palm trees. At the center of the yard stood the chief's old house, its doors wide open. Inside, the air smelled of dust and guilt. On the wall hung a large painting of Chief Okorik and his late wife, smiling proudly. Mama Ozioma stepped closer, and saw that someone had scratched the painting. Beneath the scratches were words written in ash: "Truth buried is truth that grows." She turned sharply as a low cough came from the corner. There, lying weakly on a mat, was Obomnik. His once strong body was now thin, his eyes sunken and hollow. The glowing shards of pottery on the floor formed a circle around him, as if the earth itself had trapped him there. When he saw her, he gasped. You came." Mama Ozioma stared at him in silence. "Where is your father?" He laughed bitterly. "Gone. The ground took him the night the river turned red." Her voice trembled. "Why did you do it, Obomnik? Why bury my daughter?" Obomnik's eyes filled with tears. "Because she said no. Because I was too proud to hear the word. My father told me that no woman could refuse our house. He said if she feared me, she would obey. But when she died, everything I loved turned to dust." He pointed weakly toward a small wooden chest beside him. "Open it. The truth you seek is there." Mama Ozioma opened the chest carefully. Inside was a folded letter and a small clay figurine shaped like a woman holding a seed. The letter read, "To whoever finds this, the elders lied to the people. We said Adanna's death was a curse upon the land, but it was we who cursed it. May the earth forgive us. Chief Okorik." Mama Ozioma's eyes filled with tears. She dropped to her knees. "So this is what my daughter died for, the pride of men." As she spoke, a soft breeze entered the room, carrying the faint scent of river water. The clay shards outside began to glow again. Adanna's voice filled the air, gentle now, no longer full of anger, but peace. "Mama, the truth has been spoken. The land can heal." Obomnik trembled. "Adanna. I am sorry." The wind around them grew warm. A figure of light appeared in the doorway, Adanna, dressed in white, her eyes calm like morning dew. She looked at her mother and brother, and then at Obomnik. "I forgive you," she said softly. "But forgiveness does not erase the lesson. Let the living remember what silence cost." She turned to Mama Ozioma. "Mama, it's time for me to rest. The old woman wept, clutching her daughter's spirit to her chest. Go, my child. Go where peace is. Adanna smiled. I will not go far. I will stay in the wind that cools your face and in the river that feeds your fields. Her body turned to light. The clay shards on the ground lifted into the air, spinning slowly around her before dissolving into dust. The wind grew still. A soft golden rain began to fall, washing the courtyard clean. The earth had spoken, and its voice was peace. That night, the villagers gathered by the river. The water was calm again. They built a small shrine there, made of white stones and flowers. Above it, they carved words in Igbo, Eziokwu adigi eri modu, truth does not eat a man, it sets him free. Mama Ozioma placed the clay figurine on the shrine and whispered, Rest well, my daughter. Chibik knelt beside her, holding her hand. Together they watched the reflection of the moon, full again and bright, shining peacefully on the water. And so ends the story of Adanna, the girl buried alive but reborn by truth. If her courage touched your heart, let her story live on. Like, share, and subscribe so that her voice, and the voice of every silent soul, continues to be heard across the world. Because in every story told, truth finds a way to rise again.